This is Unfiltered Everyday Shit. I'm India Sherelle. This podcast is a space for real conversations about life as it's actually happening. The good, the bad, and everything in between. It's unfiltered, it's honest, and it's unapologetic. Some episodes are reflective, some are raw. So, let's talk about it. Welcome. I'm your host, India Sherelle. Today was one of those days where I had a plan, but I was also carrying something unspoken in me. I knew I needed to go to the bank, and I had already decided this was day one of getting my business structure back in motion. I had my paperwork, I knew what I needed to do. On the surface, it should have been simple. But if I'm being honest, the fear I walked in with wasn't really about paperwork. It was about perception. There's a very specific feeling that comes with being a Black person walking into certain spaces, especially spaces tied to money, authority, and decision making. It's not always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's just a question sitting in the back of your mind. How are you going to be received? How are you going to be spoken to? And am I going to be seen as capable or questioned? How I'm going to be received? How am I going to be spoken to? Am I going to be seen as capable or questioned? Am I going to be helped or handled? This is one of those things that isn't always This is one of those things that isn't always said out loud, but it's real. And it doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from history. It comes from experience. It comes from watching how things like banking, home ownership, credit, and opportunity haven't always been extended equally, even when the paperwork is the same. So yes, that was my fear. And still, I showed up. I walked in with my head up and a smile on my face, not because I wasn't aware of what I was carrying, but because I refused to let the fear make the decision for me. And I'll be honest, I already had assumptions about how the interaction might go. I expected something cold, transactional, rushed, very, let's get through this. But that's not what happened at all. Instead, I sat down with someone who treated me like a whole person. Someone who didn't talk at me. Someone who didn't rush me. Someone who took their time to explain things clearly and thoroughly, even things I hadn't asked yet. She didn't just look at my paperwork. She listened to what I was building. She asked thoughtful questions. She shared information in a way that felt empowering instead of intimidating. And at some point during the conversation, I noticed something shifting in me. I was now relaxed. That quiet tension I walked in with started to dissolve. Because what I experienced in that moment was something that shouldn't be rare, but still is. Respect, presence, being met without assumptions. She didn't leave any stone unturned. She made sure I understood not just what we were doing, but why it mattered. She gave guidance that extended beyond the moment and into the future. She did it in a way that felt human. When I walked out of that bank, I felt lighter, clear, more confident, not because everything was magically solved, but because I had been met with care instead of caution. And it made me think about how often we walk into spaces bracing ourselves. How often we carry quiet armor. How often we prepare for resistance, even when we're simply trying to handle our business. Sometimes the win isn't just the task getting done. Sometimes the win is being reminded that showing up anyway can shift the outcome. Today reminded me that fear doesn't always mean stop. Sometimes it just means show up with awareness and see what happens. And I think that matters. especially for those of us who have learned to navigate spaces carefully. You can acknowledge the reality and still move forward. Both can exist at the same time. I didn't walk in fearless, I walked in grounded, and that made all the difference. Now, I'll leave you with this question. When you walk into unfamiliar spaces, how do you prepare yourself to be perceived? And when you're on the other side of that interaction, how intentional are you about meeting people with care rather than assumption? Well, guys, that's it for today. Remember, this podcast is just freedom. This is me. It's an outlet, it's a voice. It's somewhere I can just speak freely. Thanks for stopping by, and thanks for listening.